Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining today. This is a live training session on LenelS2 OnGuard, covering some beginning and intermediate topics. We're going to start with looking at an overview of the different applications that OnGuard has, as well as some functions such as monitoring activity, adding and managing people and credentials, managing access levels, and time specs and holidays. And I've got a list of a couple other things we can hit up as well at the end if we have more time. If there are any specific content or questions that you have that you'd like me to integrate into today's session, please drop them into the chat and I'll see what I can do to squeeze them in as well. All right, so if we start, the version of OnGuard that I am showing you today is the current version, which is OnGuard 8.2. I believe there is an update 1 out. I have not applied that update 1 yet to my system, but that typically doesn't change much in the way of functionality or how things work. OnGuard has two different kind of classifications of applications. One is they have their newer web-based clients or web consoles. That's what we have here on my screen right now. We also have a set of desktop applications. And the two main ones that we're going to look at, and I'd say the two main desktop applications that people use the most are system administration and alarm monitoring. So to give a quick overview of what each of these are, let me log in here to the web console. When we pull up the web console, we come to this landing page. And this landing page shows us a couple different things. The first, we have a dashboard across the top. And this dashboard is showing us things like system activity, how many logouts did we have, how many logins did we have, what's being modified, what's being changed. And this is just the default dashboard. There are additional dashboards that you can add to this. If you come up to the top right corner and click the edit button, you'll have the ability to add a dashboard. By default, you'll only just have this default dashboard. But if we add a dashboard, now we can select from 3 different options. We have the default dashboard, which we already have one of. We also have a cardholder dashboard, so I'll select that and hit done. We also will do another one, and let's add our event dashboard and hit done. And then we can click and drag these to rearrange them. Put the default at top, cardholder, events. Maybe we'll put events and then cardholder. You can also, while we're in this edit mode, you can also change which tiles show up and appear. So, for example, if I wanted to hide, I don't use surveillance. So here's surveillance. We can actually come and hide surveillance. And now that is no longer there. If we wanted to also, we can add a section. Let's call this dashboards. Let's take this section. See if it'll let me move the section. If I click and drag, I don't want to assign another. Let's do it here. So let's get rid of this one. And this is under the OnGuard. Let's add one here, and we'll call this OnGuard apps. Okay, so we've got the apps and the administration. We've got one hidden. And this one now we can rename to be dashboards. The reason this is helpful, let's jump out and hit save. Now my dashboards are all in their own section, and I can minimize that section and have my other 2 sections. So if you're having to come back to this quite frequently, and you don't necessarily want to see the dashboards all the time, if you put them in their own section, then you can minimize that. But let's take a look real quick at the dashboards. So we have, again, just the default dashboard, which is telling us things like application logged in, logged out, and the numbers are tied to that. We have our card holders section. Sorry, this is the events section, card holders down below. So in the events section, this is telling us across our whole system, what kind of events are we seeing? So right here, we see 2,667 system events. We have 657 access granted. We've got 25 access denied and 23 generics. You can see that same breakdown on a per door basis for the last month by event type and reader. Some of these do have some settings that can be modified. Not all of them, but if you're ever curious, there's a little drop down icon here and you can go to edit settings. This one does not have anything that can be modified. But we can see that our event breakdown, we have the most system events on my GTC optical turnstile in. We'll see why here in a minute as we look down below. But as far as normal, access granted, access denied type events, we can see how those break out. So which doors are being more used, which doors are less used. You can get an idea of where your traffic patterns are. Door held open alarms by door. So when you're looking at alarm monitoring and you see all those door held opens, and then the same thing for door forced opens, we see them in the list, but that doesn't give us a great idea of frequency of those events on those doors. And so this tells us that frequency. And so here we have 411 door held opens on my warehouse roll-up door. That makes sense. It's open for probably longer than that duration. If I were to if I were to increase the door held open timeout, then I would have fewer of these. So that might be something I consider adjusting on my system. The sales office door gets left open a lot. I'm not too worried about anything, tied to an office door. Secure vestibule door, that one gets held open 155 times in the last 30 days. So again, kind of a front door gets propped open. I'm not too concerned, but I can keep working my way down until there is something that is concerning. And then I can start looking at what needs to be done to correct that. Jumping over to the door forced. Now, if I look at this as is, I've got, almost 4,000 door forced alarms on my GTC optical turnstile in. Now, this is actually to be expected. I'm having a configuration issue with that device right now, and the reader is trying to get them to function the way that I want. And so this is getting reported a lot of door forced because it's just in a locked open state right now. Same thing on the out. So we have that behavior right there. But if we jump down to the next door, my warehouse roll-up door has 267 door forced alarms. This is because there's a button on the wall, like you normally have for a warehouse door, an up, down, and a stop. And that button does not send any kind of a signal into OnGuard to say, I'm getting an authorized command to open a door. And so OnGuard shows that as a door forced. Now, most of our interactions with that door are also through card readers. And so only in the event of somebody using that button do we get that. Moving down the list, sales, and different, so we can see where our outliers are there. And maybe that is telling us that there's a problem with that door programming or that door configuration. For example, maybe a door monitor, a door status magnet in the door is faulty. It's not working anymore. Sometimes those magnets will actually, particularly on steel doors, those magnets can drop down further inside the door to where they're not within the range to activate that, the read relay on the other end of it. And so you might start getting a lot of door forced opens randomly. Or if you are in an office space or university campus, maybe you've just got a department chair or somebody who's now propping a door open during the day that wasn't, typical for them to do in the past. And so you might want to adjust your programming to account for that. You might want to maybe set up a mask inside OnGuard so that doesn't happen or doesn't report as happening during the typical office hours or whatever their operating hours might be. Okay, as we scroll down, we see this is our card holder dashboard. Now, I have not created or modified a lot of card holders recently, so I don't have a lot of information showing in here. We do see access levels that are less used. So, for example, my Bonedum Turnstile only access level has 0 users in it currently. Custodial only has 1, and so on. So you can get an idea of what access levels aren't being used right now, and maybe they're similar enough to something else that you can get rid of them, or you can combine the two into one, or restructure your access levels a little bit. Card holder creation and deletion by date. So this would show you the cycle to which you're creating or deleting card holders. Same thing with badge creation and printing. And then this is a really good one to have here. Badges expiring soon. I don't have any badges expiring soon. I actually just refreshed my expiration dates to push them out another year. And so this would show, I believe, something within like the 30 to 90 day expiration window. Moving down, we run into the actual application tiles. And as we looked at kind of quickly, these tiles can be modified. You can hide them. You can add additional tiles if you want to. So up at the top, we can, they call them cards. To me, it's a tile because I'm kind of used to that. But we can add a card. If you wanted to put in a link to maybe one of your own company resources, company website, HR portal, time clock, you can do that here as well. So you can put in a custom link to anything that you want. Or if there's a report that you kind of go to quite often, you can create a link to any of the reports that you have generated and saved. So let's, for example, say we want an access denied events. And let's say we want that to be sorted by reader. And so we'll say done. Here's my card. We're going to take it. We can come move it down to where we want that to be. And now we've got that custom tile. Now, we also have a difference here that maybe some of you have seen or are familiar with. The color of these cards, of these tiles, is telling us something. The dark blue and you kind of get hinted to it here by the icon in the bottom right corner. But the dark blue is a link to the thick client, aka the application that can be installed on your workstation. Now, this won't install it. This is just simply a link to it. So if I click it, well, let's get it out of the edit mode first. I'll hit save, scroll back down. So if I click one of these, it's going to say, open LenelS OnGuard alarm monitoring. And then do we want to allow this web page to open this application? And so I can say either check the box and open or cancel. I already have it open, so I'm not going to do that right now. But these are shortcuts to the applications that are typically installed on your workstation if you're working with the thick clients. So the light blue, these are applications that are run within the web environment. So these are all web-based. So for example, if I come to monitor, then here is my monitoring application. I have a drop down up in the top right corner where I can kind of quickly shortcut to any of the other ones. Let's jump over to reports, or just this 3x3 grid icon that I can click on that's going to take me back to the console. And then the reports are kind of this medium blue color. And then typically these are kind of broken out into 2 tiers. So we have, our typical apps or what our end users might use. And then we have more of the system administration. And the system administration stuff, that's mostly going to be the thick clients on your workstation. So system administration, map designer, badge designer, forms designer, replication administration, replication. But we do get 1 or 2, depending on some other things. Users. This is where we can modify users who have access to log into OnGuard and then the roles that they would have. If I come back, and then I have here elements connector. So I have elements in a sandbox right now. We're playing with it. Elements is the cloud-based LenelS2 access control platform. But if you have OnGuard and elements maybe at remote sites, you can use the elements connector to push your card holders and their badges out to your remote sites. And then at the remote site, you simply grant them or deny them permissions to the doors and resources at that site. And this actually is pretty nicely set up. You define the sites. Once defined the sites, you can say the card holders and then the devices. But when you do this, you're pushing out from your OnGuard out to your Elements site. And you can create a set of filters. And so if you only want to send, or sync a particular department or a particular group of users with a common variable, maybe it's department or location, something like that, you can filter out only those groups to send out to the remote sites instead of having to send everybody. All right, let's jump back to our console. And so that's a pretty quick overview of the console. You've got My Console, which is the edited version that we've made. There's the System Console, which can be configured, but is more of like the system-wide. This is what everybody's going to see. But you can modify yours to be specific to you with the My Console, and that's where you can get the benefit of having, particularly reports. You can see your account information, change your password if you need to. And there's an about, a help, and a logout. All right. Let's jump over now to a quick overview of alarm monitoring. So alarm monitoring is the thick client that installs. So in the console, we'll see that here. Here's alarm monitoring. The web version of alarm monitoring is just called Monitor. And so both have very similar functionalities. One's web-based and one's application-based. Let's jump back over. In alarm monitoring, this is the default view that typically comes up. You can create and modify and do your own. On the left-hand side, we have a system tree. This tree is telling us how all of our doors and everything are organized in terms of an OnGuard hardware structure. So I have 13 or so doors that are all connected to a single controller. If you have multiple controllers, you would see multiple of this line item just in the list like as so, and you can expand each one to see the doors that are associated with that particular controller. This also tells us information about the doors and the controller. So this controller board is running on firmware revision 1.305, and it's currently in cabinet tamper status. That means the push button, the tamper sensor on the door of the cabinet that this is installed in is not depressed all the way, and so likely it's either open ajar or somebody's in there working on it right now. Those cabinet tampers show up as events in our log, and so if that were to clear, then we would get a cabinet tamper restored. If that were to activate again, then we would see a red cabinet tamper in our list. Beneath that, we have each of our door statuses, and so we can see here that, for example, we'll use our exterior front door. It is currently secure channel and then access mode unlocked, and some others are in card only. So that tells you the current status of the door. If I can expand out one of those doors, then we can also see the status of the auxiliary inputs that are associated with this door and the auxiliary output that are associated with this door. So this ties to hardware that's on the panels themselves. Typically, you've got, for example, on a Mercury MR, MR52 or the LenelS 1320, you'll have 2 reader inputs, and then you'll have 8 inputs, and then 6 outputs, I believe. And OnGuard is only going to use input 1 and 2 are tied to reader 1, and then it'll skip 3 and 4, and then you've got input 5 and 6 tied to reader 2, and then you'll have your outputs. Output 1 is going to be tied to the door strike, and then and so on from there. But the things that aren't by default used or associated with a door, those can be programmed and used in custom ways. And so we see the status of them here. In a future session, we'll look at how those can be leveraged, because there's some quite powerful ways. For example, I have a lockdown button that is actually wired into one of my spare inputs, and when my lockdown occurs, that then triggers some different functions across my system. But I'm doing that using a contact closure button tied to one of my free and open inputs on one of the panels. From the icons, you'll notice that there's a couple different states. We have just our normal state. This is what we hope to see on all the doors. We also have this yellow X means that the reader interface is offline, meaning OnGuard is not talking to the reader. Now, my system is all programmed to be OSDP. The alternative to OSDP is Weekend. Weekend is a one-direction communication protocol between your readers and the panels that they are connected to. OSDP is a bidirectional communication between the readers and the panel. And the difference here, Weekend, the data flows from the reader to the panel. And there's not a lot of verification, or really there's no way for even the system to know whether that reader is online, offline, whether it's been tampered with, or somebody's installed a device in between that's going to sniff out your cards. OSDP counters that, though, because that bidirectional communication lets us verify that, one, I can talk to the reader, there's nothing else listening in between, and the bidirectional state of that also lets us encrypt that communication as well. And so it's pretty similar to like an encrypted RS-485 type communication. I think there's some slight differences in the protocol between OSDP and RS-485, but not to dig into the weeds too much. OSDP is going to give us some additional information of the actual status of our reader. And so that's why we have that showing here. These readers are programmed OSDP, but they are not connected to my system right now. And so we actually get that interface offline status. Okay. Let's see. Let's jump over to... Nope, before I do that. I want to show you, just point out a couple things. Alarm monitoring, for those of you that use it, when there is a critical event, something like a door forced open, something that's going to show up here in red, when that happens, this application will frequently come to the front of your screen, interrupt whatever you're doing. And that can both be a good thing at times and a bad thing. If that is not something you enjoy, if you find that to be more of an intrusion to your work, there is this checkbox here, automatic visual notification. By default, it comes on checked. And so that's going to allow the application, when we get that alarm, it's gonna maximize it full screen to one of your windows, and it'll present itself to you there. For me, I'm not watching my system for alarms, but I am in there frequently trying to just keep an eye on a door that's maybe being a problem, or add or remove users, manage access levels, things like that. And so for that to pop up is more of a nuisance to me. So you can turn that off just by checking or unchecking that box. And so with that unchecked now, it's not going to pop up. Also, some of the menus up here are context aware. So for example, configure. Right now I have the left side window of my screen selected, the system status tree all devices. If I go to configure, the options here in configure are specific to what I can do with this window. If I come over here to main alarm monitor, and you see that turn to a dark blue, if I go to configure, now my options changed. So now I have the option to filter, I can select different columns, we can modify this view. So Some of those are content or context aware. So just be aware that if you're not seeing what you expect, then maybe you've just got the wrong window selected. These can be moved and resized. So if you want to add additional things to your screen, then you can do that. So you can tile them however you would like. And then when you are done tiling them, there is the option to, and I don't do it often, so I need to save settings. So it'll save settings on exit, but you can also save settings now. And this should keep and save the layout that you've created. And so that when you relaunch the application the next time, it pulls up just that same way. All right, let's jump over to system administration now. And it logged me out. Let me log back in. So these logins, by the way, can be tied to a directory. So if you've got an LDAP or an Active Directory or Azure and Microsoft credentials, or there's a couple other options as well, you can connect those credentials to OnGuard so that you can log in with those credentials, and then you're not having to create a bunch of manual users in your system. All right, system administration is where all of the configuration and programming happens. This is not an application that you would want to give to just anybody, because you can do everything from make your system amazing to completely destroy it, all within this application. With that said, just be careful in what you do and where you click so that you don't make any mistakes. You can do a backup of the database, and if there were an issue, you could restore that. We'll cover that, I think, in an advanced class, because to do that, we have to jump into SQL. But in here, we have a lot of options. In administration, we can set options for how the whole system behaves, how card holders behave. For example, this is a common one. How many active badges can a card holder have? I think by default it comes as 2. And so you might come in here and modify this and say, we only want 1 active badge, or we want 5 active badges, whatever you need. If you use pins, what kind of pin are we using? Are we using a 4-digit pin or a 6-digit pin or a 9-digit pin? And then use or lose badge number of days. This is actually a really nice feature. If a card goes unused for, we'll say, 30 days, then we would type in 30, and then at the end of that 30, we would say this badge has been terminated or lost. We can actually define additional badge statuses here. We could just say timed out or expired. And then after 30 days of non-use, that badge would move to that status and lose its access. That's a great safety feature if you've got a lot of people maybe working remote, or if you just want to ensure that lost badges that don't get used on a regular basis get terminated after a point in time. So there are kind of some things in there that you might modify or change, and so on. Okay. So, but yeah, as a broad spectrum, system administration is where we do all of our programming and configuration. So let's jump over to now looking at some specific functions. And again, if you've got any questions as we go through this, drop them in the chat, and we'll see if we can address those as we go. To monitor activity of what's happening in your system, there's 2 places we're going to do that from. We can do it from the web UI, and we can do it from alarm monitoring. So let's jump to the web UI. So that is done, as we talked before, in Monitor. In Monitor, we're going to by default get, by default is not necessarily true for everyone, because if you've saved a custom layout and set that as your home, then it will come up as that. But we have some default layouts. We've got all alarms. We've got badge only, non-badge, pending, hardware tree, active video monitor, and maps. And right now, I'm looking at live events. And so if anybody were badging through my doors right now, they'd be popping up in this screen, and we would see those events. We can also look at this in a historical context. So we can say historical, we can do the last 24 hours, or we can do the last 7, 30, or 90 days. We can also do a custom range where we say a start date and an end date. So if you're looking at a specific event, I need to know everything that happened surrounding this date and time as we're trying to investigate maybe who left a door open or why we had a break-in, why a door was propped open, things like that. We can look at that. For simplicity, I'll just do the last 7 days and I will hit apply. And here is all alarm activity for the last 7 days. In this, you'll see that we have some color codes with some priority numbers in them. So we've got 50, 150, 200. These are customizable and programmable for your system, but these are the defaults right now. Customizing those is an advanced topic that we'll cover in the future. We also have, is this an active alarm or just a one-time notification? Is there associated text with this alarm? Is there video tied to this alarm? Has this alarm happened multiple times within a short period of time? So do we have a count associated with it? How are we responding? The person it's associated with, that person and their badge, the specific alarm message that we get. What is the alarm? Is it door held open, door forced open, access granted? The device that alarm happened on. So whether it's the sales office door, the secure vestibule door, or the warehouse roll-up door, the controller, sub-device, if there's a sub-device, and then the controller that those all report back to. And then we get the timestamp. These are all sortable columns. So if I want to sort by date and time, which is the default there, then I can do that. If I want to sort by the alarm type, then we can do that. And so here's a bunch of requests to exits. We can sort it the other direction and get all of our access granteds, and we can see those. Let's go back and sort by time. We'll put September 26th, so that's today, so we'll put newest at the top. The respond here is to, we can respond to something as in progress or acknowledged. So if we get, for example, we have a door forced open, so we'll say, this is in progress. And I can say dispatched security officer to check on door. And we can add those details. So it is currently acknowledged in process. Here's our note that we added. And we can have, maybe our dispatcher or our security officer reports back and says the door was propped open, or maybe the handset was unlocked. And so instead of badging through, they could just walk right through. Handset was unlocked, relocked, and closed door. That's a common scenario, for example, on crash bars, because a lot of crash bars can be dogged open. And so we can say that, and then we can acknowledge the alarm, and that now shows as acknowledged. You can see that that icon has changed. It's acknowledged. It's not going to let us acknowledge it any further. That text that shows up there, so let's click on that, see what happens. Oh, it just says door forced. Okay. So if we wanted to change from all alarms to badge only, then we can do that. So let's go to badge only. Again, we're in live. We can go to historical. We'll say the last 7 days. This isn't going to tell us any of the door forced opens, any of the door held opens, any of the system type events. This is only going to show us badges and people and what's happening. You'll notice, for example, if I go back to all, in all, I have an invalid badge. This was a badge number that is not registered in my system, but it did get scanned on a door. And that was today at 9:13. If we go to badge only events, an invalid badge, comically enough, does not show up as an event in the badge only events. Because it's not tied to a user, that only shows up as a non-badge event. So Here are the non-badge events. We'll look at the last 24 hours, and here those are. Pending, these are going to be pending events, things that have not been acknowledged yet. And so if you want to have your workforce, your employees work in an acknowledgement type method, like this thing happened, you have to acknowledge it. These pending is where there would be things that need acknowledgement. And so we've got a door forced open on the warehouse roll-up door. I can come and say, so we can acknowledge it. And because I acknowledged it, it won't let me put a comment on it. On this one, we can say in progress. We can say something like trained employee not to use the buttons, but the card reader instead. And on a roll-up door, that makes sense because the roll-up doors, by code, you have to have local buttons to operate that door, or a chain there at that door. And so it's an option that's available, but we would want to train our employees not to use that. So here's our mark in progress and our mark acknowledged with the notes. And as you see, those are clearing out of the list from the pending. Hardware tree, we've already seen that over in alarm monitoring, but it's the same thing. So we can see what the devices are. We can expand them out, and we can see those aux inputs and outputs that we talked about. You can see the state of them, currently deactivated, currently secure. Secure would mean not activated. We can see that those are inputs and outputs. We can select multiple items if there's an action that we wanted to do. We could say, we could take our output, for example. We can go actions, and we can activate the output. And that changes from activated, and it, I believe, will hold there until we deactivate it. We can pulse it, so we have the two options. We can activate and hold, or pulse. So we'll deactivate it. And if I had anything connected to that output, then we would have seen some kind of a system response. A lot of times we see siren strobes tied to those outputs. For example, if you have a warehouse and you want to have an alarm go off anytime one of the side doors or an emergency exit door opens, you could put a local sounder above that door, tie that to the aux output, set up a rule in your programming that says anytime this door is forced open or held open, both would be good to have, then I want this sounder to go off. And that can all happen through that aux output closer. All right, advanced video monitor. If you have your cameras integrated into OnGuard, so from the direction, in at least for us, it would be milestone into OnGuard, then you would be able to view those cameras tied to events here. I don't have that set up. I like to go the other direction, so my OnGuard events go into milestone. At the end, if you haven't seen that yet, hopefully we can find some time and make that look at that as well. And then maps. If you create and define maps, then you can get those map layouts. In our last OnGuard training, we created maps, and that video is available on YouTube now. So if you want to look at that, there's a great resource there. All right. Layouts. So you can create your own custom layout. You're not just stuck to looking at just one thing at a time. So we can have custom layouts, and these custom layouts can be however we want to structure them. We went over that last time as well, and I want to make sure that we can cover the access levels, time specs, and holidays. So I don't want to dive into this too much. But if these custom layouts is something that is of interest to you, definitely check out the Security and Sandwiches video that's posted to YouTube for OnGuard advanced topics, and you'll see that there. All right. As we move through, so that's kind of a high-level overview of how we monitor activity from the monitor web console. If we jump over to the alarm monitoring window, we get a lot of the same things. One thing I didn't show you in the web console was how to trace. We'll look at that here because it's a very handy feature to have. But what we can do is we have our running list of alarms and events. We've got that door forced open. Now you'll notice there's a little notepad next to it. If I double click on it, it's going to open it, and it's actually going to say these are the notes. Dispatch security officer to check door, marked in process, and then marked as acknowledged, handset was unlocked, relocked, and closed the door. So we get those messages saved that we can review in our queue. We've got our granted access. It tells us the badge and the person that we read off that reader. Now, what this doesn't tell us is the Christian who used this card the same Christian as the person that we've authorized to use that card, or is that somebody who picked up a card and is posing as somebody else? That's where that video verification element comes in, of tying it over to our access control system, is we get really quick syncs between the two systems to say, hey, yes, this was this person. No, that does not match that person. Here's that card number that's not registered in our system. It shows up as invalid badge. We have our access similar things. This was scanned on this reader on the front door. Access was granted because the reader is currently in an unlocked state. So regardless of whether that is registered or not, it does show up, but it does show as an access granted simply because that reader is already in an unlocked state. And that was the exterior front door. Here's its current access mode, which is unlocked. It's on a schedule. All right, so to trace, there's a couple different elements that we can trace. We can trace a controller. We can trace a particular reader. We can also trace a particular user. So if I come here and I select one, I can hit trace. Let's pick, just for fun, we'll pick Bruce Banner. So I can come and trace. Here's the controller. I showed you the shortcut for that. Here's the device. Showed you the shortcut for that by right-clicking on the door. And here's the badge. So we can trace the badge. It pre-fills the badge ID number in there that it got from the read. We can also, if we wanted to trace a random different badge, we could just type in a random different number and trace that. And it's going to come up with no results because I don't have any badges with that number on it. But let's go back. We'll trace Bruce Banner, trace badge, and there's the number. I click OK. All right, do we want to do a live trace? Live trace is only going to show us events from now and moving into the future. Doing a historical trace is going to show us that history. So I can just say today, or we can roll backwards and say from the beginning of the month. A couple filters and options there. If you wanted to, you could just say only show me access granteds. This always pops up on my other monitor. Don't know why. But you can modify what shows up in the trace based on event type. I'll just leave the defaults by now and we'll hit OK. So in the last 30 days, here's everywhere we've seen this user. We've seen him on the IDF door, the project management office door, the support office, sales, and so on. Now, this is because I grabbed this badge and I walked the building this morning. That's why they're all from today. Okay, so we can close that. Now, tracing, let's jump back over to the web, and I'll show you tracing in the web. There's a couple different ways. You can find their recent activity in the list, all right? And let's say we'll do that same Bruce Banner. So here we go. I can click on Bruce Banner, and it pulls up a sidebar with filter for the badges. So he only has one badge. If he had multiple badges, I could say all badges or a specific badge. All right. In that recent activity, so here is the list of all that recent activity of where this selection of cards tied to this user has been. We can also see the badges associated with that employee, and we can also see the access levels. So this badge gets all doors except IDF, always, no lockdown bypass. Okay, so that's one way. We can also save the trace. So if we hit save, now we add a tab up here to our window. So we have all of our alarms, and then we have that trace. And so this trace is now moved out of the sidebar to our main window, and we can turn it to live if we want, and we can watch moving forward where this person has gone. Let's close that. Okay, if something happened at a door, we can trace that door, and we can say, Let's go to, for example, we'll pick a door. Let's pick the IDF door. So I can click on the IDF door, and here's all the recent activity for all the people who have badged at that door. Now, let's say that they don't have recent activity, but you still want to know what they've done and where they've been. There's two things you can do. One, you have a search box, and so we can just come and type Bruce. Oh, maybe it does not let us search names. I think I've tried this before and had that realization, and I keep forgetting. Let's see, we can add filters. Our filter options are things like priority, time, device, the reader, device, the alarm panel, device, camera, subdevices, controller, card holder. So we could select a card holder is equal to, and then we could do this. So we type in the name or select it. So we can filter it that way. We can hit clear just for kicks. Bruce doesn't return any results. Banner, does banner return results? No, okay. The free text search, granted, does not seem to search all of the fields like I would expect. So that's a conversation for maybe a future feature request. But another option is we can jump over to back to our console. We can go to credentials. And from here, we can select a person. So let's say, let's see, I've got Bruce. Where's Tony? I don't think Tony's had any recent activity, but we can select the user. And now here in recent activity, we have that option to do a trace here. And you'll notice it's got that little pop-out icon that we're all familiar with. So if I click that, it's going to open a new window, take me over to the monitor module, and pull up that user with their badges and their recent activity. And this one doesn't have any. Okay. All right. So that's monitoring activity, how we do it from the web UI called monitor, and how we do it from the thick app, the thick client called alarm monitor. Now, how do we add people? How do we manage people, the credentials, and then the access levels that they have? So let's start with that over here in, we'll come back to the console. So we're going to do that in credentials. So here is credentials, and here's our list of people with credentials. Let's go look at Bruce. Here's Bruce, first name, last name, cardholder ID. This is along the lines of like a employee ID or something specific to, unique to that person, not their badge number. This is not their badge number. We'll look at that in just a minute. Okay. This is just the minimum required. You must have a last name. First name's not required. Last name is. You could just put in a last name and be good. Okay, card holder. This is going to be details about the card holder. So last name, that's our required field. First name, Bruce. Middle name, Hulk. Card holder ID or employee ID. If we wanted to put address, this could be home address. This could be work address, whatever you want. You also, and we covered this in our last advanced class, you also have the ability to create custom fields. And so by creating those custom fields, you would be able to actually specify this is a home address or this is a work address, and you could log them both if you wanted to. Or if you wanted to log whether this is a work from home employee or a remote employee, or hybrid or on property and on-prem only employee, then you could create a selection of field for that. So we've looked at that previously in that advanced training and how to do that. So if that's of interest, check that out as well. Pat, to answer your question, I am not sure if you can search by I would imagine you could, but I don't have any employee IDs entered in my system to search for, so I wouldn't be able to test that without first putting in a couple. But if it's not, then again, like that would be a feature request we could put over to LenelS2 to say, hey, can we make the searches in the web applications a little more free text across all fields instead of just a subset of fields. So, but I will have that conversation and I'll find out. But okay, so let's jump back to Bruce. So we looked at those. Some of these are required, some are not. Anything with an asterisk is marked as a required field. Here, the only one is the last name. You can make others required. Again, that goes back to Forms Designer that we covered previously. You can put in the account, or sorry, the title. Bruce is currently a sales account manager. We're going to make him now a support engineer so he can fix all the things that he breaks. And that's going to move him over to the support department instead. And we're going to move him from Los Angeles. Maybe he's now in Salt Lake City, and we can hit save. Badges. He currently has one badge. We can check the box and we get our actions list. We can duplicate that badge. We can issue mobile credentials. We can resend mobile invitation. We can print or delete. We'll leave that one as is for now, but we'll add another one. So here we have our add badge. This badge we could have active, lost, returned, terminated. We'll say active. And badge type. These are definable categories, definable types that can actually do a lot of pretty cool little automations for you. I can say for my Stone employees with this badge type, one, it's going to be this particular layout of a physical badge. You know, it'll have the Stone logo on it. It'll say first name dot last name. It'll, you know, do a bunch of other things. For the contractor, maybe I just have it say big black letters across the top contractor. And so we can get different badge layouts. We can add photos or not add photos, but this also can control default access levels. So we'll select that. Okay, badge ID. This is the number from the badge, and I'll just make up a number here. We'll just do 1052 and activation date. And when is this valid? When are we going to deactivate it? Date and time. And then, so, and a nice thing is, I actually really like this. It tells you the duration of that. So you get a quick math check. So if you're trying to just do 3 days, you can know really quick, hey, it's actually 3 days or 4 days. Okay, details. Do we want to use extended strike held times? This is the most common thing that people check here on this box. You know, if you're going through a door, maybe, and you need to allow an ADA person better, you know, more time to get through a door before it shows as held, open, or then selecting that box is going to do that. Also really common if you're walking through the door pushing a cart all the time, or if you are carrying boxes, maybe you just need a few more seconds to get through that door before it shows as a held open alarm. This will let you do that. And then you've got some information like badge last changed, last printed. Are they authorized for keypad alarm response? Are they authorized for override locked reader mode? Things like that. Okay, we'll hit done. So, and then access levels. What access levels do we want this badge to have? So here's the access level. We can say none. We can use new badge type default access group. So this is, again, tied to that badge type. Copy from a previous badge, or we can choose from the list. So we will say you get the custodial closet, check that box, and we'll give you the turnstile, and maybe that's all this badge gets. Done. And we'll just click done all the way through, and at the very end, we get a save. The dots here indicate that there are unsaved changes. And we can hit save. And there we go. Now Mr. Bruce has 2 badges. So that's adding people and granting them access levels inside of the web client. Now let's jump over to alarm monitoring, because you can also do this in alarm monitoring. And this functionality in alarm monitoring is actually the same functionality in system administration. So I'll show you where they are in each. So we can go to View Badge Information, and that's going to pull up a window for us. Okay, from this window, we have the ability to add. If I come over to System Administration, we have the same thing. We can come up to Card Holders, and that Card Holders is going to pull up the exact same window. It's just maximized, but there it is, where we can add. So same functionality, two different applications. So let's jump back over to alarm monitoring. We'll continue with, let's actually create a new one. So we'll go to card holder and we'll say add. And let's, I need a new character. Let's do Cinderella. I don't think Cinderella has a last name, so we'll say unknown Cinderella. Don't know if I spelled that right, but we'll work with it. Okay, we'll say Cinderella is a visitor. And we can drop in all the information we want, address, title, department, division, whatever we need. We'll keep it simple, and we'll just jump over to badge. On our badge, we carry this top bar information that's consistent across most of the screens. And here we type in that badge ID. So we can type in our badge ID. Again, active, lost, terminated, returned. We'll say active. And instead of being active today, let's say this is only going to be good for the month of October. And so there is the month of October. And if we wanted to do PM, what we actually could do is just say the 1st of November, because that's going to cut off at midnight between the 31st and the 1st, which would give us the full month. Okay, yeah, we'll let her use extended strike times. If we wanted to, let's add a photo. So we'll go to capture. That pops up another window here. And we can do a couple different options here. We can do file import. If you have a camera attached, you could use a digital camera or a scanner. Digital camera and file import are probably the most common two. We're going to use file import, and we'll say browse. And we'll go to, let's see. I don't think I have any photos on here. Anyway, you would browse to that directory, and then from there, file settings, general settings, you open the file, I believe, which is going to take you to that location. You would then select the file. Let's see if this is not a great example, but we can pull in a photo. It's going to give us a bounding box that we can drop wherever we want, and we can say OK, and now that becomes her photo. We can also go capture, and we can, I believe, ditch the photo if we wanted to, or maybe we just load in a blank one. Show admin settings. Once you have photos in here, you do have a lot of options in terms of what do we want to do in terms of adjusting that photo. We could spend probably an hour going over just the different processing profiles and the options that are there. So, all right. So, but doing that would let us do that. I didn't mean to hit clear. So we'll go to Bruce, and then we'll look at the access levels tab. So we can hit modify. Modify is going to modify the badge that is selected. So we've got the two badges. So we'll look at this one. Here's that Bunitum and Custodial. We can hit modify and say, okay, we'll also give you the exterior doors. Now, I want to point out something here. In the thick clients, there's a theme that OnGuard uses with selecting items. And I'll show you the difference right here. I can select the row, all doors always except IDF. That row is selected. If I don't have these other things, that looks like, and we can do multiples, it looks like I've selected these 3 access levels to grant. And if I hit OK, well, what happens is nothing actually got added. In OnGuard, nothing is actually selected unless you click on the icon and get the checkbox. And now when I click OK, then we get those 3 added. All right, let's look at now how we create the access levels. To create access levels, the only place to do that is within system administration. There is a web console called Access Manager, access levels, access requests, and settings. I don't think you can create access levels from in here. This is more like if you use self-service card holders, which is a license add-on, or if you use visitors, which there's varying levels of the visitor management system. Some are included and some are a license add-on. But this is what the Access Manager is for there. In the web apps, there is not a way to manage or create the access levels. That can only be done in the Thick client currently. So let's go over to System Administration. We will close out our card holder window. We're going to go to Access Control and Access Levels. The other one we're going to look at here in a little bit is also time zones, because these two things are very related and tied to each other. So access levels, let's jump there. Here are the existing access levels that I have. And we can create a new one. We'll go to Add down at the bottom, and we'll type in a name. Let's call it S&S Training Access Level. There we go. And what readers do we want to assign that access level? Now, there's a new search box up here at the top, which is amazing. I'm so glad that they added that, because you used to have to just scroll through the list until you found it. But we can say IDF. All right. Well, let's maybe not play with our IDF, because I don't want to give access to that even temporarily and forget to do it. Let's do the warehouse doors and the secure vestibule door, and we'll do the exterior front door. So we'll take those 4 doors, and those are going to be part of our access level. Now, I can't move them over to the right side yet because I'm still missing one element. I have the readers. I need to define when. Okay? So these are our time zones. So I'll say always. I can click that over. Now we have our list of 4 readers with always. Now I don't have to do the same time zone for everything. Let's say we also take these other exterior doors. Let's unselect those ones, and we'll take our other exterior doors, and we're going to say you only get those during office hours. And so now we have a mix of readers that people have access to, and different times they have valid access through those. We can say show similar, and it's going to show us if there's any existing access levels that are similar to the one that we're trying to make. This is actually really helpful, because when you start to get 100 different access levels, it starts to get hard to keep track of what each one does. And so if you look for what's similar, then that can be quite helpful, because maybe there's one approximating already what you want, and you don't have to create a new one. Maybe you can just modify an existing one a little bit or whatever. User commands. Do we want this access level to have first card unlock authority, double card unlock authority? Those are the 2 main ones that we come across or use from here. On these doors during this time. Keep in mind that everything compounds like that. All right, so we'll say, yes, you get first card unlock authority. We'll hit OK. And we have created our access level. So here's our access level, and we can review what we have there. So now that we have that access level created, we can now assign people to it. There are some bulk operations that you can come and look at. They are under. I'm not seeing it right now. What am I missing here? Let me loop back to that one. Let's look at elevators. Elevators can be complicated. We'll cover that in another class. Access groups. This is where you basically say this collection of access levels is this group. And I have one right now, stone staff, which is just Punitum turnstile only. Let's actually modify this existing one. And we're going to say that my stone staff gets, we'll say this one, first card unlock, exterior doors, Punitum. Yeah, we'll get you custodial as well and say, okay, so now we can combine multiple access levels into a single group selection. And we'll go back and look at how these now show in our users. All right, so let's look now. Actually, let's do that real quick. Let's go back to our users. We'll go back to search and we'll say banner. By the way, when you click on search, it's going to allow you to type and edit any of these fields, and this becomes what you're searching for. I can search by last name. I can search by first name. I can search by my cardholder ID here. So if you've got an employee ID and you need to just type in their number, you can type it in here and hit OK, and it's going to return all the results. I have 0 results for that. But we can do search. Let's do banner and OK. And we get 1 of 1 results. If we had multiple results, we can cycle between them here with the previous and next buttons down by the number of results found. All right, let's go to access levels. We're going to select the temporary badge we created, and we'll say modify. And we can take away those existing ones. We can add a new one or whatever we want. Now, notice there's no groups in this list, but there are groups up here. So I can say access levels, and here's this group. So we can say select. Are you sure you wish to select the 5 levels from access group stone staff? And I can say yes. And it'll automatically select all those. So you can use groups to kind of, well, group your access levels by some commonalities. All of my employees get this. All of my visitors get this. All of my admin get this. And so you're not just having to come through and check individual things. Okay, those groups also come in handy when we start talking about badge types. Because you can say for my stone employee badge type, they get this stone employee access control group. All right, let's look now at the time specs and holidays, because we've seen where those come into play. So let's look at how we actually make them. So we're going to go to access control and time zones. All right, so we have multiple tabs. We've got holidays, time zones, time zone reader modes, and time zone area modes. Mainly, we're going to look at holidays and time zones. Time zone reader modes, this is how you put a door on a schedule. And for example, I have my front door on a schedule for office hours. Now, I'm starting card only and ending card only, but I also have first card enabled turned on. So when somebody with first card unlock permissions badges on this door, it will toggle it to unlocked mode, and it will hold that until we reach the end of our time zone. But you could also just do one quickly that says, let's see, we'll do modify, and we will, let's say we want let's pick a door, the secure vestibule door, to be unlocked during office hours, and we'll just not do the first card unlock. We'll start with unlocked and we'll end with card only. And I can throw that over to the right-hand side, and now we have that added to our schedule, and I can say okay. So now my front door and my vestibule door have different unlocks based on a schedule, one with first card unlock, and the other just on a raw schedule. For those who don't know, that first card unlock is a nice feature because if you have a front door like I've got here, and I want that door to unlock at 8 o'clock and relock at 5 o'clock, but I don't want that front door to unlock unless my staff are on site, because I wouldn't want an empty unlocked building. Then that first card unlock is going to hold that door in a locked state, even though the schedule says it can unlock, and it will hold that until somebody with that first card unlock authority badges at that reader, at which point it will unlock for the rest of the duration of the schedule. So instead of unlocking at 8, if they show up at 8:05, then it will unlock at 8:05. Okay, looking at holidays. Holidays are pretty straightforward. We have different holiday classifications, different classes or types. So you might say something like office closures. You might say like, well, actually, let's rename this to federal holidays. You could also say rename holiday type. You might do construction, CONSTRUCTION, closure. You can define a bunch of different holidays, and you can do snow days. You can create a bunch of different options here. Okay. Each holiday can be assigned to one or multiple types. Let's add a new holiday. Let's see, what do I have in here? Christmas, full closure, 4th of July, Juneteenth. Let's close for Valentine's Day. So we'll say Valentine's Day. There we go. And we'll say that this is a federal holiday. Maybe it's just a stone office closer. Maybe we'll be closed for Valentine's Day. And we'll say this is February 14th. Hopefully that's actually Valentine's Day. Pretty sure it is. And it's just for one day, and it repeats yearly. And we can say, okay. So now we have our Valentine's Day as a stone office closer, and it's February 14th every year. Great. So what do we do with it? Okay, well, let's look at time zones. We have an always, a never. Those are two defaults that exist in the system. You can maybe delete them if you want, but I wouldn't. Somebody should probably have access always. I don't know when you would really use access never, but it does exist, just as the opposite of always. I have always with lockdown bypass, and I also have an office hours. Let's create a new one. Let's call this weekends. Actually, let's call this time zone. We'll just do a new office hours. New office hours. And we'll call this Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with no holiday access. It is helpful, and I haven't done a good job of it on my other ones, but it is helpful to have more descriptors in your time zones, in your access levels. So the more descriptive you can be in your names, the better things are going to be. Okay, start time. We open at 8 o'clock, so we would say 0800, and we close at 5 o'clock. So I could do, let's see, it's 24-hour time. So 5 is actually 1700. And I'm going to come back to this in a minute because there's a caveat here. And we want this to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now, to grant access on Monday, we are checking the box. To grant access on Wednesday, we are checking the box. To grant access on holiday type 1, we check the box. If you don't want holiday access for this holiday type or any of the holiday types, leave them unchecked. All right, so right now, This access level will go, or sorry, this time zone will go from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock Monday through Friday with no holiday access allowed. All right, now back to this 5 o'clock. The way that access control systems typically work is they hit the leading edge of a minute is when they start, and they end at the trailing edge of a minute. So if we had seconds added to this, then this would start at 08, 00, and 00 seconds. If we could see the seconds on our end time, we would have 1700, 00, and 59 is actually what this would go to. So if I want my door to lock more at 5 o'clock as opposed to 5:01, then I roll this backwards 1 minute. And so this is going to hold and stay valid until 16:59 minutes and 59 seconds. So right as it turns from 4:59 to 5 o'clock is when that's going to change and end. And we'll hit OK. So here's our new office hours group. And again, we're not allowing access in during holidays at all. If we wanted to, we could say federal holidays, maybe you don't get access during federal holidays, but maybe on a stone closure, maybe you can come in on a stone closure, get some overtime, catch up on some projects or whatever. So for that, we would say new office hours, modify. Let's change the name because we said no holiday access. We're going to change this to Stone Holiday Access. All right. And all we got to do is come check the box H1. Click OK. That H1 relates to this right here, Holiday Type 1, Stone Office Closures. All right. So that is time zones. Time zones pull into so many different places in OnGuard. We've already looked at the door unlock schedule. They're tied to access levels. They can be tied to when different items are masked. So you can mask your door held opens to office hours. I don't care about door held opens during office hours. And then those wouldn't be reported. Maybe you do care about door held opens after office hours or door forced opens. I don't, for example, here in the office, I have Rexes on all my exterior doors, all my, my typical public doors, but the office doors, I don't have Rexes on them. And that's common actually, because in a lot of situations, the motion Rex clicking while somebody's trying to sit there and work can be kind of annoying. And so on an office door, it's common to not put a Rex, but then if they close the door, now we get a door closed and they open the door. Well, nothing authorized the door to open, so OnGuard is going to say door forced open. Well, maybe during business hours, we don't care about that. Let me actually show you how to do that. So we're going to go to readers and doors. This is the list of all of the readers and doors that I have. And I can say, well, in here, I don't actually have any of my office doors. Those are in Elements. But we can say this door 1, for example. On my, let's see, it's under settings. So mask forced open during time zone. So hit modify. We want to mask a forced open during office hours. And we want to mask a held open during office hours. And we can say, okay. And it's that simple. So you can do that one door at a time. Remember, we're clicking on the icon to get the checkbox. We can also come down and hit the multiple selection, and we can select multiple doors. And we can apply that to multiple doors at the same time. When OnGuard masks something, it makes it in the software show up as though it never happened. So if we're masking a door forced open or masking a door held open, those events then don't show in the logs. They don't show in alarm monitoring. They don't show anywhere. So I wouldn't see those masks here. And we do see, so like we just made that setting change. So here's door held open masked for door 1, door forced open masked for door 2, for door 1. And then we on the on the left hand side in our tree, we see door 1 with it's currently offline, but it is card only, and we are masking door forced. So we do see that information there. We can come and right click update hardware if we ever wanted to see if something changed. So now we have held and forced. It just wasn't showing both. Okay, jumping back. So let's undo that though, because I don't want to leave that as it was. And okay. So that's another place that time zones can come into play. All right. That is, I think, all that I kind of had to show. Let me just review my note real quick and see if there's anything else. Any questions on what we've covered while I'm looking this over really quick? If you've got questions, whether we covered it or if there's something else you want to look at really quick, drop that in the chat. And we'll see what we can go over. Okay. Let me show you one other final thing. Let's see, where is it? All right, while this is getting logged in here. Okay, while that's doing that, let me show you something else. We talked about badge types quite a bit, so let's actually look at them for a quick moment. Badge types. You define your badge types pretty similarly to how the rest of all of our definitions work. But we have stone employee. Let me hit modify so we can see it better. So our badge type stone employee class, is this a standard, temporary, or visitor? Okay, well, this is one I want to be persistent, so we're going to say standard. The default deactivation date. I want my cards to, by default, expire. You know, you can drop in whatever you want. So we'll say 5 years. That's, I think, the default of what OnGuard has set there. We can also come and say, we can specify a date. I want all my badge types of stone employee type to terminate, to expire on a specific date. Or we can say no default, but then you're going to be required to manually enter that for every new badge that you create. We can also override existing badges with these new values. So we'll just leave it the default 5 years. Okay, default access group. Here's what we talked about, that stone staff, that access group, which was an aggregate of the 4 or 5 different access groups that we selected for that. Just to show you where that was access levels, access groups. So these are the access levels that are in that group, and badge types is one place we see that group. So now when I create a new stone employee badge type, it's automatically going to pre-fill or pre-select those access groups, those access levels. Okay, badge layout. So I can have a contractor badge layout. I can have a stone layout. I can be front. I can have a different layout for the back and different things like that. Let's look at the badge layouts. So that is done in a different application. It's called Badge Designer. And let me get that open. Get logged into it here, and then I can drag it over. Okay, so here we have our layouts. We can open an existing layout. Here's my stone security. And we have our layout. Pretty simple. They have a template, so we can do open sample layout. We can look at that one. Here's what they do for that one. So here we put a photo in the background. They've got a barcode, the username, photo, company logo, name, address, signature, if you guys collect signatures from people. Lots of different options there. Once you create and define these layouts, then they become available in your system administration to then pair with any of the badge types. So then when you go to print that badge, that association is already made of this is that badge type. Okay. Let me see if I can find one other element here. Was it under here? Okay. Remember that bulk the bulk controls I talked about earlier? So the reason I couldn't find it is because it's part of the context-aware menus that we discussed previously. For example, when I'm on access levels, I just go Application, Edit, View, Administration, Access Control. But when I go to card holders, I now have a card holder menu. In that card holder menu, and let's go to card holder, bulk. We can bulk assign access levels. We can bulk remove access levels. We can bulk modify badges. We can bulk issue mobile badges. And then depending on some other options, we have some different segments or replication, caching policies, or we can delete card holders in search. So I don't want to delete anybody. But any results turned in my search. So if I were to do this right now, we've got 56, and then that bulk would delete everybody in that. Okay, so to answer a question, I am running, this is OnGuard 8.2. So this is the currently released version. There is an 8.2 update 1. I have not applied update 1 yet, but this is OnGuard 8.2. And that particular override lock in reader mode option that you saw earlier, that is a new feature in OnGuard 8.2. OnGuard is working on implementing some like system lockdown type functionality. So if I get a panic button, then I can lock down the system. Well, if I lock down the system, then nobody can get through. I still need some people to be able to have that lockdown bypass. And that's where you saw with my access levels, where I have structured some access levels to have lockdown bypass and others not have lockdown bypass. Setting that up is something we would review in a future class, just to keep it simple for now and today. So, okay, well, that's everything that I had to cover. We've gone about an hour and a half. If there's anything else that people have questions on, please, you can drop those in the chat still and we can answer them, or reach out to any of the Stone Security support engineers in your area, or if you want to just go straight to Salt Lake to the support team there, definitely reach out. They're a great resource to help you work through any issues you may have, or any particular how do I do this questions. Because it's one thing to see it in a training, it's a completely different thing to see it in implementation. So definitely please check that out and let us know how we can help you best. Look for this to be posted to YouTube probably in about 2 weeks. Give me some time to get it edited and get it posted, and look for it there as well. Let me pull this up. Check out our upcoming Stone Security events if you want to be aware of what's coming up. Techtober is a big one. Please check out Techtober. If able, you're all invited to come to Vegas to be here in person. If you're not able to travel for work, then we will also be pushing this live to YouTube. And so you can check for that there as well. But look at the other things coming up. There's some cool things happening. A lot of open houses. Looks like we're don't quite yet have 2025 posted. Patrick's usually pretty good to get those up as we get to the end of the year. So check those out for next year. And again, if you need additional training, maybe refreshers on things we've already covered, there's a Security and Sandwiches playlist that is part of Stone Security's YouTube channel. And there's all the videos there for the year have been posted up to this point. So check those out. I just had to take a bunch down and because there was some information in them that I need to clean out and mask. And so check that out as those new ones have been updated as well. But yeah, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.